Joining us to discuss this now is A&E Dr Emeka Ogorota, who thinks that the Prime Minister does need to see what people who can't afford private health care have to go through, and broadcaster Emily Carver, who says it's a good thing that he's freeing up the NHS appointments for others to use. But let's start with you, Doctor, first of all. Put the same point... I don't know what I think about this. Can we just put the same point as I was discussing with Susanna a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Is what you want practical? I mean, let's move it to the A&E sort of arena. Is it practical for a Prime Minister to go in presumably a fleet of 3 or 4 cars to the local A&E unit, sit in the corridor like the rest, maybe even sit on the floor with his security detail for 6 or 7 hours before he finally sees a doctor, when he has actually got a country to run?
Yes. Honestly, I believe so.
Good answer. All right.
Yeah, I believe so. For me, obviously, I see everyone from day to day. So it doesn't matter how much money you have, where you're from, what your social status is. You come to A&E, there's emergency care, and you wait. And unfortunately, we're in the NHS, which is a system that we've seen has had its troubles from year to year to year. And these troubles need to be solved. And if the people at the top have to go through these struggles like the everyday person, maybe there'd be an incentive to actually make some change. And so I feel like everyone needs to experience exactly what's going on the front lines to understand what NHS workers are going through, nurses and doctors, and what patients are going through every day.
And you think that would change policy?
I think it could. I think that would be the first step, because if you don't actually see what's going on, so if you have healthcare and you're privileged and you have the money to get private healthcare, by all means, your healthcare is your business, that's you. However, if you see what people are going through day to day, you might be like, actually, there needs to be reform, there needs to be a big change in this. And we see it every day. I work in it.
Yeah.
And patients go through it. So why wouldn't everybody?
Yeah, Emily, does it matter to you whether the Prime Minister has an NHS GP? And the irony, of course, is his father was an NHS GP, so he might say that he understands from that point of view. But we're in an unprecedented winter crisis, and yet he could, you know, if he has a private doctor, just ring up and get an appointment right now.
Well, I think he probably should have fessed up to it, because it does feel like that. It does feel like Rishi Sunak, because of his enormous wealth, constantly has to justify how he spends his money. I remember a big debate around private schooling for him and his children. I remember a big debate about him giving money to the school he used to go to, the public boarding school. So it does seem like there are people in this country who simply do not want a wealthy Prime Minister. And one of the things that comes with wealth and money is being able to go private. But the irony of all this is actually more and more people...
So you think he should have been open about it and honest about it?
He probably should have been, but I do think that the reason he wasn't is because he's been getting so much heat over his money and his wealth for so long that he probably just didn't want it to be yet another distraction.
But does it matter if he does? It's one thing to be open and honest about it, and he makes the argument it's private because it's healthcare, which I think a lot of people would understand. But does it matter if he's got an NHS GP or not?
He's a private citizen, like we all are. He is a free citizen. We live in a free world. If he wishes to spend his money in that way, then it's not for me to necessarily judge. What I would say, he's not single in his use of private healthcare. Many people have private healthcare as part of their work contracts.
But he's the person in charge of the country, and as Dr Emeka says, unless you know what it is like in the NHS and you're not buying your way round it as the Prime Minister in charge of policy, then how could you possibly know what needs to be fixed? And the front of the eye this morning, a quarter of adults go to A&E because they can't get a GP appointment.
Well, I think it's a bit of a fatuous argument, actually, that one has to have used the NHS GP service recently in order to be able to discuss the NHS winter crisis. Does he have to have used the state education system to have any opinion on how it could be run better, what things are going wrong?
Do you know what? I definitely think the Education Secretary...
to be able to talk about public transport?
Yes,
I think there are people in this country who don't want anyone to have anything better than they do.
Do you think it's
and I think that's a race to the bottom.
OK, let's throw that back at you. She's saying it's a fatuous argument. It's impractical and silly.
And it's jealous. It's envious.
No, I disagree. I feel like if you want the trust of the public, you need to understand what the public are going through. If you haven't actually been through it, you're not going to understand. Like, the thing is, obviously, I work there. I've seen patients. I've seen what they've had to go through, especially in A&E. And this is our emergency care system.
And what about this story? Dr Emeka, sorry, Emily. Dr Emeka, how many patients do you see who say, I'm only here because I couldn't get an appointment with my GP?
Far too many.
Really?
Far too many. Yeah, far too many. And you actually feel for them, because they'll be like, listen, doctor, I'm so sorry. I've had to come in. I don't want to waste your time, but I couldn't see a GP. And you're thinking, this shouldn't be the way to go.
Can't quite hear Rishi Sunak saying that, somehow. Those words aren't sort of...
You can't hear him saying that because maybe he has alternative means to see a GP.
What do you think about the point...
Everyone has.
Just further point that you made, what do you think about the point that at least he could have confirmed or denied that he had... And we all assume that he does have private health. Otherwise, he'd say, no, I don't have private health care.
Of course, no disrespect to Mr Sunak, but you have to ask yourself why. Why would he not say? As in, you wouldn't say because you think there may be negative connotations of you saying...
Margaret,
maybe
well, I've explained why, and I
it.
think I'm completely right when I say it's because there has been so much heat over his personal finances that he doesn't really want to say either way to avoid that. But what I would say is that private GP services offer a fantastic service for many people. Some of them are very cheap indeed. You can get an appointment for £20, £40 to be able to have a video call with a private doctor, get it over and done with, get your prescription, bish, bash, bosh, done. It's really not only the very wealthiest in this country who are using this service. It's a lot of young people who are used to the Deliveroo culture, used to just grabbing an Uber, not used to waiting on the phone for hours and hours every morning for a GP appointment.
I see your point, but you have to ask yourself, why is he going private? He's going private because there's a flaw in the system where he can't actually see an NHS GP. And for him, that's reality. But for so many people across the country, that's not the reality.
No, I agree.
Can I ask you a left field question? Ask you a left field question here. I had a very interesting debate on the radio yesterday saying that actually because of the pressure on GPs, there aren't enough of them and there aren't going to be enough of them for the foreseeable future, we should be actually farming out the right, for example, to give simple prescriptions for antibiotics, say, to pharmacists, that we should actually treat pharmacists a little bit like a walk-in GP surgery. Would you agree with that? Yeah,
in some cases you can. And in some cases you get prescriptions just by going online and filling out a survey. There's loads of different avenues where you can still get medications just by filling out stuff which can take ease off GPs, and GPs can go through what you said online, see it, as in notify it.
I can get amoxicillin for this cough of mine by going online?
Potentially, yeah. You can get antibiotics by going online. Lloyd's Pharmacy, you go online.
I'd say one of the strongest arguments against what you're saying is that we are constantly told, and it's very real, the winter pressures, the pressures in our NHS, the fact that people can't get GP appointments, the fact there's a massive backlog. If people are able to take out private health insurance and use private healthcare, is that not overwhelmingly a good thing for the state of our NHS? It takes pressure off. And also, if it's so immoral for the Prime Minister to use private healthcare, then why are so many NHS doctors taking on private clients at the same time? Clearly, they think it's a good thing.
First of all, it's not immoral for anyone to use private healthcare. Many of us will use private healthcare, which is OK. Everyone has a right to use whatever healthcare they want. But you have to think, these NHS GPs are private GPs. You have to think, where are these private doctors coming from? You're taking them away from the NHS. Obviously, I've worked in private medicine. I work in NHS medicine. Yeah. So you have to take time out of the NHS to work privately. Even if you're doing it in your own time, you will take time out of the NHS.
Would it satisfy you?
Taking doctors out of the system when we have a lot...
Very quickly, would it... OK, he's not going to go and sit in A&E waiting for an appointment, but would it satisfy you if he actually gave up a day of his time and sort of went along and watched what was happening in an A&E ward from, say, 10 in the morning to 10 at night?
OK, my question is, Richard, is he too good to wait in A&E like the rest of us? Is he better than any of us?
Well, hang on, you just said that you've used private healthcare in the past. Are you too good to wait?
I said I've worked in private healthcare as a private doctor in healthcare. And as I worked in private healthcare, obviously I was working in the NHS as well, but I now work fully in the NHS.
Right. Emily, do you know what? I think it would have been really powerful if the Prime Minister had said, of course I have access to private healthcare, and when I can't get an appointment, I use that route. But I want to fix the system so that people do not have to do that.
Exactly.
Yes. And I think that would have been very effective because, of course, he's rich enough. As you say, you know, people can have access, even if they don't have the income that Rishi Sunak and his family have. But if he made that point, it would have been very powerful.
If you get bored with this job, Susanna, that should be your next job, political advisor to the Prime Minister, because that was extremely adroit.
Well, there are people who used to work at ITV, I think, who do now.
That's true.
No, I
think he should just fess up. He's too embarrassed of his own wealth and too scared of what people are going to say to actually just be a normal person.
All right, we've got to finish it there, guys. We're out of time. But thank you both very much. Enjoyed that.
All right.
Also, we need to let you get back to the front line, Dr. Emeka, because, frankly, we can't afford to lose you.